Is Elon Musk really planning to fire as many federal workers as he can to send them to coal mines to win the trade war against China? What's going on, everybody? It's Professor Zeus, and I'm back with another video. Yo, if this is your first time on the channel, just know I greatly appreciate you for stopping by. Go ahead and hit subscribe. We're on our way to 2,000 subscribers, and we are taking it the humble route. Guys, listen, what we're looking at today, we are looking at the claim that Elon he's looking to the reason he's trying to get as many government employees out is to essentially send everyone to work in coal mines and factories in order to compete with China in the trade war. And that obviously sounds crazy, but he's posted some things on X and things like that, and it's definitely interesting, and it's definitely interesting to think about, right? So let's unpack it from all sides, being fair, critically, and with no fluff or exaggeration. So let's pull this up right now. So it says here, Elon, we need to shift people from low to negative productivity jobs in government to high productivity jobs in manufacturing, as well as mining and refining of materials. So, this whole thing, of trying to interpret this tweet, right? I looked at it and, it just made me think, is this whole point of Doge Elon's way of, gutting the government to, send workers to, mines, more manufacturing plants, and in a sense, have a similar type of society, similar to China. In my last few videos, we've uncovered how a lot of people are essentially going extremely crazy because they've noticed or they've found out that all these luxury brands are essentially drop shipping to the US. So a luxury brand, for instance, like Louis Vuitton, would outsource workers in China to do the hard labor in order to make the bags, in order to make the whatever clothes, whatever, have them do 90% of the work, then have the same materials go back to Italy, go back to France, wherever the respective company's headquarters is located, then have certain tailors or extreme skilled people put the finishing touches on it and then slap the made in Italy, made in Europe tag on it, and then sell it to customers in America, right? We've talked about that in my last two videos. But now, with this whole situation, it's seeming that, because everybody has been talking about, we need to stop giving manufacturing jobs to China and bring the manufacturing jobs back here, right? Almost 80% of people who have been hearing that talking point agree that manufacturing jobs need to come back to America. But not even 20% of that 80% would be the ones who are willing to actually go out and do those jobs, right? Because it's not easy, right? Add to that another article that I just saw, restarting coal plants after Trump's executive order makes no economic sense, right? April 10th, U.S. President Donald Trump is advocating for increased coal production in the United States. Reviving decommissioned coal plants to meet this goal makes no economic sense. Trump executive orders could potentially delay the closure of coal. So you see here, President Trump is talking about, bringing coal plants back, different things like that. And it just makes you think, right? It just fuels the narrative that, they're pushing for a massive industrial overhaul to take over, China's dominance in manufacturing, right? But if we hit, pause, is Elon saying that, fire everybody so they can grab a pickaxe to go to these coal mines? Or is there more of a nuance, right? His point seems to be more about economic efficiency, right? Government jobs, in Elon's perspective, might not contribute directly to the GDP of manufacturing, right? And with China essentially controlling much of the world's mineral refining, like 90% of some of the rare earth minerals, he's arguing that the United States needs to step up its game to secure supply chains for things like electric vehicle batteries, what he is in direct business of. Tesla deals with electronic vehicles. So it is in Elon's best interest to have a situation where we're manufacturing more rare earth minerals in order to help Tesla car batteries. Now, it sounds strategic, but this is where a lot of the criticism obviously comes in. Because if we zoom out the bigger picture and look at the US-China trade war, again, I've been looking at it in my last few videos. China is a powerhouse in manufacturing and refining, producing certain components that are critical from everything from Tesla to military technology. China is the one that directly manufactures those things. Now, there's been some headlines, speaking about China halting exports of key minerals, which could essentially choke industries worldwide, right? And he's being vocal about it, pointing out that the rare earths aren't actually rare, they're everywhere, but refining them is the bottleneck. Now, if you look at this tweet here, it says China has suspended exports of certain rare earth minerals and magnets to the US and around the world. China is drafting a new regulatory approach to the minerals to prevent them from reaching American companies. And Elon's response is important to note that what matters is the ability to refine rare earth elements, which are not actually meaningfully rare, and manufacture magnets for use in electric motors. Again, he has to point out his interest. People understandably tend to think that rare earth mineral deposits are what's scarce, given the name. That is false. They're everywhere. As with lithium, what China has that others lack is the heavy industry of refining the minerals. So when I read this, it makes me think, if you cut out so many federal workers and these guys are out of a job, what you can do, not what you should do, but what you can do, you could essentially hire people to work in coal mines, hire people to be able to mine, manufacture places on Earth where these, rare earth materials and minerals are, right? Now, it gets messy because building up U.S. refining and manufacturing could create jobs, obviously, again, and then reduce reliance on China. Again, it sounds good, but people are arguing that this push ignores the environmental cost. Refining minerals is dirty work and produces pollution that it can affect air and weather quality. People who live in like Korea, they speak about pollution from China's industrial sites, and sometimes how a lot of the pollution drifts from China to neighboring countries like Korea, North, South Korea. If the US essentially ramps up mining and refining, could we be trading one problem, being dependency on China, for another, like environmental damage at home, right? And then this whole idea of the last tweet that we just looked at, sending people to the mines, manufacturing, it's not just because Elon talks like he's a walking meme, right? Mining and factory jobs can be grueling. And again, 80% of people are in favor of bringing manufacturing jobs back to America, but not even 20% of these 80% are willing to actually do this type of work because it's grueling, and not everybody's going to be excited about leaving their desk job for wearing a hard hat the vest and all that and going out to the mines and doing this type of work. And then on the other side, people who defend Elon's way of thinking, they're saying he's not forcing anybody to do this. He's just highlighting that a strong economy needs people making stuff. And we know the US economy, we like to buy stuff. We don't necessarily like to make stuff. We like to buy. Right? So who has the better argument, right? And then if you look back, if we take another step back, look at the whole green agenda, right? Making things more sustainable, making things more holistic. Just a pivot. You and I verse is looking at, different ways, and we can look at sustainability for life. Because I started to think about it. Instead of focusing on going to space, why not focus on utilizing the space we have here and making the most out of it? Not necessarily refining minerals or anything like that, but learning ways to, optimize agriculture, make things more sustainable. But I'll have another video for that. Elon, he built his whole empire on electric vehicles, renewable energy, essentially being a super environmentalist. But mining lithium, cobalt, and other rare earths for batteries, that's not exactly eco-friendly, right? People are looking at it like it's a green scam. Not because renewable energy or sustainability is bad, but because the process can be extremely dirty. It's like that short story, The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas, where a perfect society has to hide a dark sacrifice. Are we okay with polluting parts of the planet to power our Teslas? Are we? And to be fair, Elon isn't saying pollute everything. He's pushing for innovation, better refining technology to minimize harm. But again, critics are arguing he's sidestepping the alternatives, like investing in, mass transit. Like we need trains that can go from California to DC, more biking infrastructure or remote work to cut energy use altogether, right? Because if we stay at home and work, we're essentially, saving energy versus all the energy that it takes to get us from our house to wherever we have to go to work, like the office, right? And again, studies are showing that remote work slashes commuting emissions. So why not lean into that instead of cutting all these federal government workers, right? You're there's more renewable energy in that fact, right? It's almost like his interests, his visions are tied to selling cars, not rethinking systems. We have to ask ourselves, is this a conflict of interest, right? And I'm being fair and I'm looking at it from each side. Again, instead of doubling down on mining and manufacturing, could the US focus more on conservation, conserving, and more urban and smarter planning? If you look at cities like Paris, they're limiting cars to reduce emissions. If we imagine that in America, just try to imagine that in America, right? Or what about wind and solar being able to scale up to reduce reliance on batteries altogether, right? These type of ideas don't get that much airtime because they don't align with big industrial profits. But they could address the trade war and climate goals without anyone going to a coal mine. And that being said, trying to dismiss Elon's, plan, it really ignores the hard truth. China's grip on critical materials obviously is a real risk, right? If the US doesn't build up its own supply chains, industries can find themselves at a halt. So it's not just about Tesla, it's about aerospace, it's about semiconductors, even, defense. So maybe the answer is just a balance, right? Invest in green, renewable technology and refining, but don't try to sacrifice workers or the environment to reach that goal. So, essentially the idea that, Elon and, the administration want to fire everyone and send them to mines and refine materials, refine minerals and things like that, maybe that's a little bit exaggerated, but it's rooted in real concerns. Elon's pushing for a manufacturing revival that is going to counter China, but it raises questions about pollution, right? Worker welfare, and whether we're missing more sustainable solutions. But let me know what you guys think. Should we go all in on bringing back manufacturing back to the United States, factories, all that, or rethink how we use energy and resources? Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Again, if you enjoyed this deep dive, smash that like button, share it with a friend, and subscribe. Hit that bell notification to always get notified when I drop a new video, and subscribe. We're on our way to 2,000 subscribers. Again, never ever forget, it's you and that verse. Information, application, execution. Until next time, peace.